I'm going to talk about essential workers, and in defining essential workers, I think that it all depends on what lens you're looking through. That may determine who is deemed an essential worker. And then I think you can maybe look a little further into that to see why that list exists, and maybe some of the biases that create these lists. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security defines essential workers as those who conduct a range of operations and services that are typically essential to continue critical infrastructure operations. Critical infrastructure is a large umbrella form encompassing sectors from energy to defense to agriculture. The National Conference of State Legislatures created a list of essential workers, a map of essential workers, and it includes energy workers, child care workers, agriculture and food production, critical retail, critical trades, transportation. I think there's some glaring essential workers that are not included on this list. Where are teachers on this list? I just don't understand if you look at the again, the biases. This is the National Conference of State Legislators. Did they together feel that you could put childcare workers on this list, but not teachers? So I think, the plight of many of our workers today, and many of our workers don't have the voice or advocacy of a union to fight for them, to make sure that they are being given the consideration as an essential worker, so that they are treated accordingly, and that they are compensated accordingly. And so as the Arizona AFL-CIO, who represents 54 unions in the state of Arizona, we represent affiliates that represent a number of essential workers. And you come in contact with them every day. They're your letter carrier. They're your grocery store worker. They're the UPS driver that drops off a package at your home because you're not even leaving your house sometimes to conduct business or everyday life. And so these people are really, really working hard to make sure that we can retain some sense of normalcy. The transportation workers, bus drivers, light rail operators, healthcare providers, first responders. These workers are represented by unions, and many of these unions are constantly having to fight and battle with our governor and many of the companies that they represent to make sure that those workers are being considered as essential and being compensated and treated accordingly. So one of the things that I think all of you did today, and in many senses, we are definitely preaching to the choir with all of our presentations, was, what can we do about all of these issues that we're confronting? And so to give you a little bit of information about what organized labor, or what unions the Arizona AFL-CIO is doing, as part of our regular activity during the legislative session, we convene what's called a unity labor table. And it consists of several of our unions nationally that um, that organize these tables throughout the country in different states to monitor state legislatures, especially around bills and issues that are going to affect workers. And unfortunately, in a state like Arizona, since the inception of the unity table here in Arizona, um, about 7 years ago, we have basically played defense for our entire existence. We haven't had a majority at the Capitol so that we can um, develop and run legislation that would help working people in this state. Instead, we're constantly fighting all of the bad bills that you guys have been talking about, all of the voter suppression bills. Part of our table consists of our two education unions, the Arizona Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers. So the budget is always a big part of our conversation. And, we often use David's organization to make sure that when we see a bill being introduced that is essentially giving our tax dollars away, how we best can analyze the bill and fight the bill and defeat the bill. So the budget is always a big part of the work that we're doing at the Unity Labor Table. Some of our members of the Unity Table belong to the building trades. Those are our electricians, our plumbers, our pipe fitters, boiler makers, carpenters. And so, in this state, they have really been put at a terrible disadvantage because of the ban on project labor agreements that exist throughout the country in most places, but have been ruled illegal to an extent here in Arizona. Prevailing wage laws that would allow workers to be paid a fair wage based on the wages of the local um, contractors and contracts that are existing in the state. And all those things have been legislated away here in Arizona. And so we are constantly trying to rebuild the rights and protections for our building trades. There have been constant attacks on our union apprenticeship programs, and that would allow private companies to essentially charge workers for a job, and then they would provide the work at a lesser quality with no accountability. Whereas our union apprenticeships um, allow young people, a lot of young people, but the workers that enroll in apprenticeship programs, they learn a trade that stays with them a lifetime, and they earn actually a very livable wage while they're becoming a journeyman or an expert in their field. And so these are some of the attacks that our building trade unions are always under here in Arizona, and we're always fighting at the state legislature. We convene a weekly legislative meeting that is conducted by our political director, Joe Murphy. And that is open to anyone that would like to attend. We generally have one to maybe 3 or 4 state legislatures that report to us every week on what's happening at the legislature. And we get firsthand updates directly from our legislators on bills that we're focused on or that they themselves may be introducing or fighting. Many of you take part in those legislative meetings. I think Veronica can drop the link to those meetings. All are welcome to attend. And again, this is a focus on our state legislature, and many, many times, of course, the discussion will always be around our budget. The AFL-CIO nationally, of course, has been one of the largest proponents of the CARES Act and this third relief package, because it does provide so many benefits to workers across the country, throughout our state, and it does intertwine with our state budget. And so I think, David maybe can make a few comments on that. And so the next large focus for the AFL-CIO is the PRO Act, which would be the largest, most beneficial piece of legislation for workers in this country for decades. It would basically do away with right to work as we know it. And there are many, many other related benefits for workers and their ability to organize into unions. And so that information's Veronica's sharing right now. We, of course, like everyone else, is really we're asking everyone to make sure that you do get involved, that you're engaged. And I think every group talked about it, and I don't think I could say it any better or more thoroughly than they did. But just to give you an analogy that I think a lot of people may relate to, I used to be a person that said my vote didn't count, and that it didn't matter. When I got active with my union and got more involved and more educated, you learn, how untrue that statement is. But then you realize how many people really feel that way and act on that notion. And I think that it's all of our responsibility to continue to engage people so that those that have never been part of our political system, who've never had faith in our political system, can find that it is accessible and that it does matter.